At its simplest, a croissant is just layers of bread with fat in between, so I found myself wondering if you could laminate something other than butter. I did some experiments and learned really quickly that at the very least, whatever you layer in has to be fairly firm. Pork lard was way too soft. Even at refrigerator temperature, it gets really gloopy and messy and starts oozing out the sides. But I wondered if there was a cheese that could work. I thought brie might have the right texture, so I gave that a shot and it actually laminated okay. And the end result didn't have a perfect honeycomb inside, but was still pretty open and tender, and had great flavor from the cheese. I loved the idea of an Oreos croissant. A recipe for chocolate croissants was a good base, using my favorite recipe from Benny. Shout out to this genius, he makes the best homemade croissant recipes, linked in the description. If you can find it, black cocoa powder is the same kind they use in Oreos, and it makes the dough nice and dark. For the filling, I beat powdered sugar together with shortening and rolled that out in the dough. But something went terribly wrong. When I cut and shaped these and let them proof, they got all soggy and collapsed, and after baking, they looked like this. They looked like cow pies. I think what happened was the sugar in the filling being hygroscopic pulled moisture out of the dough and made it collapse. Something like that. So to make this work, I would need to use butter, as usual. I ran out of black cocoa, so I switched over to regular cocoa, and then added some ground Oreo crumbs to the outside. And there are a few ways you can do this. You can press them into the dough while shaping, but after the dough expands while proofing and baking, you get lots of empty spots, so you need to add more. After baking, I brushed them with some egg white, and then sprinkled the crumbs on. And then I injected them with the cream. This gave me what I was looking for, a stuffed Oreos croissant. It didn't meet my lofty visions for how awesome I thought it would be. It was fun to try, but I think croissants and Oreos are just different enough that meshing them together doesn't quite work. I was more optimistic about a s'mores croissant. I ground up some graham crackers and added them into the dough, laminated with butter, baked them up, crumb-coated with graham cracker crumbs, then injected with some melted chocolate followed by marshmallow fluff. This was my favorite, especially when it's really fresh and warm. This offered the best of both croissants and s'mores together. And they're making Flamin' Hot Cheetos everything these days. I figured Flamin' Hot Cheetos Croissants needed to be a thing. I wanted to make the inside a bit cheesy if I could, so I added some macaroni and cheese powder with the flour. This did weird things to the dough's texture, and it didn't bake up quite right, so it worked better to just keep the dough plain. And then egg wash and crumb-coated with Cheetos after baking, and then I filled them with Cheese Whiz. The end result speaks for itself. I think you have to be in just the right mood for this kind of thing, but it definitely works. This is probably only the tip of an iceberg in terms of weird croissant variations you could come up with, and while these were all fun and interesting, honestly I didn't like any of them as much as just a plain croissant. There's something magical about this. There's even this super nerdy article that explains on a molecular level why butter is so perfect. Apparently it has just the right kind of fat crystals to deform and spread for a laminated dough. Maybe there's room for some molecular gastronomy nerds to use gelling agents to make other foods equally spreadable, or maybe there's something else I haven't thought of. Let me know in the comments if you have any ideas. If it piques my interest enough, I might try making it, but until then, I do think butter is best.